Welcome to Prime Life. We call it Retirement 2.0. Leave each episode with tips and new ideas to help you navigate retirement in our new age. It's your time. Make it count.
This podcast is for educational purposes only. It is not intended as medical, investment, or financial advice. We do not sponsor or endorse any of the individuals, companies, products, or services featured on this podcast. Any statements or opinions expressed are of the individual who makes them. We hope you enjoy the episode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Prime Life Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Joseph Katz, and I'm here today with Mary. How you doing, Mary?
Hey, I am doing super fabulous because I'm here with you, and we have a very interesting guest, I must say.
I am excited for this recording as well, so let's get to it. Mary, do the honors, please.
Thank you, Joseph. Today we have Clark Hoefnagels. He's the CEO of Catch. You're probably wondering, what is that? Their mission is to protect people from cyber scams. Clark, welcome to Prime Life Podcast. Would love to hear a little bit about yourself and why you've created Catch.
Yeah, so we started Catch almost a year ago now, and it really all stemmed from a family scam event where $27,000 were lost. And as we kind of picked up the pieces, unpacked how the scam happened, took back accounts, realized like the emotional devastation of the event, we really realized how big this problem was, and how much opportunity there is to help people. That's really how it started. And just a quick stat for your listeners is the FBI IC3 just released their latest 2023 scam report, and it has again gone up, reported scam to $12.5 billion. So lots of money lost.
That sounds like some light reading for everyone. So we've had a former FBI agent on our show. We've had some other folks who have been working on elder scams and frauds and so forth. I'd love to dive in with you a little bit. You know, you've been doing this for a year, you said. What have you learned about scams that has shocked you, surprised you, changed the way you think about your business, etc.?
Yeah, so we think about the business in kind of three pillars, and this is in general scam protection as education, technology, and support. And we really felt that there was an opportunity with the technology, and that's where our business is primarily focused. But education is also a really big piece there. And our technology really kind of leverages generative AI and the revolution that's happening there to detect scams at the point of contact. So scammers are trying to target us all the time. We all have those scam texts that are coming in, calls that we get, right? There's a certain conversion rate. If you're thinking about it from a sales perspective, there's that conversion rate that you would that would happen from like a marketing to sales to a paid user. The same thing, scammers are doing the same thing. How many texts, how many emails, how many phone calls are they able to send out and convert that into a scam? And our kind of vision was that, is there a way we can protect people from the number of scams that they get, which ultimately brings down that conversion rate, which ultimately means less dollars lost from scams.
So, Clark, as you may know, we focus on the 55 plus audience. However, we've been hearing from different individuals that scams are also increasing for younger people. And that's been very interesting. Can you speak a little bit about that? And then if you wouldn't mind going into a little bit about what you believe the psychology is for individuals, for example. Oh, that's never going to happen to me. Probably just happens to older people too, because maybe they've, lost a step, or I don't know, maybe they're lonely or whatever. And so they're more easily reeled in, if you will.
Right. Yeah, so this is a myth that older adults are more susceptible to scams. In the data, we actually see that scams target really every generation equally. There are a couple unique factors with older adults, which is that they have more stored wealth, which is a really important piece, right? If you're a college kid, you just don't have that much money. There's less to take. If you're an older adult, there's typically more money to take because you spent a generation work or a lifetime working. The other really important piece with older adults, and this I imagine applies to your audience here, is that you have less time to make back that money. If I'm a college kid, I lose $3,000. It's obviously a lot of money, but I have a lifetime to make that back. It might not have the impact. But if I lose that money at 65, at 70, at 80, which some of these people are, that has a much greater impact on your life and how the rest of your life plays out. So it is a myth, but there are some variables that kind of incentivize scammers to target an older audience. And then in terms of the psychology, it is very interesting, incredibly interesting. And the one insight we've had here is that people agree across the board that scams are a problem. I almost never talk to anybody who's like, nope, scams not an issue for our society. I mean, the IC3 report that I mentioned kind of says it all, but it's in the news all the time. AI is in the news all the time. How AI is being used for nefarious reasons is in the news all the time. Nobody disagrees it's a problem, but it's not a problem for them. And one of the big factors here is that we all encounter scams. We encounter scams all the time. And we are often encountering scams that are of low quality. And that gives us this feeling of confidence that we can navigate scams. We can tell if something is a scam because, oh, look, I got something today and on my phone, it was a text and I was able to identify that it was a scam. Therefore, into the future, I will always be able to tell if it's a scam. So we kind of overestimate our ability. What's even more interesting is that, so we spend a lot of time talking to people who have been scammed. And what's interesting is even if you have been scammed, people still believe that they have learned their lesson, quote unquote, and are therefore not susceptible to being scammed. So either they have or they haven't, but either way, the result is the same. Is like, no, I won't be scammed. I'm not like I wouldn't fall victim to a scam because I'm too smart.
So that is very interesting. The psychology there. It's not going to happen to me. We think we know better. You can take a look at another industry, which is similar, I guess, in some ways, insurance, right? Oh, I'm not going to get into a car accident. My house isn't going to burn down. But yet we all have insurance products for these various things. So are people just not willing to spend money on cyber protection or fraud protection? Or is it there's so many different things out there that people aren't sure what to buy? And we haven't even talked about your product, so maybe we should talk about what your platform does as well. So maybe weave that all in together.
And we'll get that answer after a brief word from our commercial sponsors.
NASA is always working harder to be your carrier of choice. We offer insurance products that can help you meet your retirement goals, such as protecting your savings, securing lifetime income, or paying for healthcare costs. We're dedicated to providing best-in-class service and are keeping things simple, and we'll have your back. We have around 400,000 policyholders and contract holders and have been doing this for a long time, 170 years, but we remain humble enough to always try to improve. For more information, visit nfg.com. Nassau Insurance products are issued by Nassau Life and Annuity Company of Hartford, Connecticut, Nassau Life Insurance Company, East Greenbush, New York, or Nassau Life Insurance Company of Kansas, Overland Park, Kansas. Subsidiaries of Nassau Financial Group. Products are not available in all areas. Policyholder counts are for all Nassau companies as of September 30th, 2022, and are subject to change.
Coverite is the first digital concierge health insurance platform focused on Medicare. Their mission is to make Medicare more transparent and accessible for America's 60 million Medicare beneficiaries. By simplifying a traditionally confusing and complex decision, Coverite delivers a simple, seamless, and hassle-free plan selection and enrollment experience. Try the Coverite platform and see for yourself why they've been referred to as the TurboTax for Medicare. Visit coverite.com/podcast to learn more.
Yeah, so it's a really interesting thing. So what we have realized is that people are willing to pay for things that protect their money or their data. And there was a recent Ipsos poll that kind of highlighted this, where if I'm remembering it correctly, 77% of people are willing to learn about it. 37% of people are willing to protect their data or their money. And then 10% of people are willing to pay for scam protection or like some type of protective product. And I think the psychology there is that even though scam protection feels further away from the problem, it's actually doing more to kind of help blunt a lot of the chance or the likelihood of you being scammed. But what people are mostly concerned about is the ultimate goal of scammers, which is to get to your money, right? Or use the data to get to your money. So it kind of makes sense. It's just that scams are interesting because once the hooks are in, once the scam is underway, they're using you to get to their money. So you actually need to stop it before it gets to the money. And that's the kind of the challenging piece here. In terms of our product, what we do is every email that comes in, we put a label on it as either scam or low risk. And the purpose there is kind of twofold. Is one, there's some pretty clear indicators of a scam, and we can kind of provide insight into that to make sure that, again, we're kind of blunting the number of scams that you would get. And then the second is really building this awareness and education around what scams look like. We have a little side panel that opens up, and it gives you information about, why we labeled this as a scam, what the indicators are, getting a second set of eyes on the email if that's something that you're interested in. So there's kind of this education plus technology play together that comes together to try and protect people.
So what kinds of things have people said, though, as they've used your product in terms of the awareness, but also how it may have helped them prevent being scammed? And you said something interesting that I never thought of. You said, like, we as humans end up like almost helping the scammers get what they need. And I would like for you to elaborate a little bit on that.
Yeah, so I think there's two ways that we are helping scammers, not like very indirectly, but the first is definitely sharing a lot of personal information, especially with AI. AI has an incredible ability to take a whole bunch of data and personalize it, right? You're seeing this a lot in the sales context, where they take a whole bunch of information about a company and their LinkedIn profile, the person's LinkedIn profile, and put it into a sales email that's crafted for you. Well, the same thing's happening. They're scraping your social media posts and your privacy settings and anything you've put on the internet, putting it together. And this a friend of mine was scammed, and they used the pet name. It was a grandparent scam. They used the pet name of the grandparent, the child, information about where they lived, and the context of their job, to really like craft this incredible narrative that felt really true. And the first step in a scam is building that authority. And that's what they are able to do. You can build authority by having a lot of personal information about an individual. And so that personal information is like one thing that we kind of need to lock down in a way that we haven't before. And then the second thing is really this culture of victim blaming. And this kind of goes to the whole underlying psychology of scams, is that one of the reasons people don't want to pay for scam protection is because they're not going to fall for it. I'm using air quotes here, right? Like, oh, it won't be me. It's not me that would fall victim to that. There's this cognitive dissonance, right? We don't want to believe that we are fallible, and that's a really hard piece here. But what that means is that when someone does become a victim of a scam, they feel shame. They feel shame because they shouldn't have done it. And with that shame, it means we don't report. We don't tell others. We don't take the steps to basically like create awareness about this problem. And this manifests itself in two ways that really impact people. One is that just for law enforcement, getting a sense of this problem. One of the reasons this problem hasn't really been addressed fully or like as completely, and it's coming to the forefront now, is because they estimate only 1 in 10 people are reporting, right? So that 12.5 billion number that I gave, it's way higher. We have no idea because people don't want to report because of the shame of it. The second thing is that the number, I think, from Kathy Stokes, she runs the ARP Fraud Watch, was that 80% or people are 80% less likely to fall victim to a scam if they've heard about that scam before. So by you not telling your loved one, like your friends, your loved ones, whatever, about this, you are increasing the likelihood that they fall victim to that scam. So kind of two factors, but it ultimately leads to this cycle of scams continuing and going on and on.
Yeah, it's a vicious cycle. So, quick question.
Yeah.
You mentioned AI a few minutes ago as, from the sort of the negative standpoint where AI is being used to collect all this information and create, messages that will trick you into giving them your information that ultimately gets to your money. How are you using AI to prevent that? Like, what's the positive side of AI, if you will, on how you're tackling the problem?
Yeah, so for us, the kind of insight with AI is that generative AI is really good at understanding language in a way that we haven't had before. And how scammers are getting to us is through these communication channels, which is ultimately using language. And so there's a really exciting opportunity for AI to basically find these data points, put these data points together around how language is being used to trick people. Because now it typically isn't happening in a scam typically doesn't happen in a single email or a single phone call or a single text. That's generally not what happens anymore. It's typically like a series. But you can imagine that if you had those 3 emails together, you could very quickly put together, right? And so that's kind of the exciting moment for AI, is that language is more accessible to AI, and the ultimate goal is still the same for scammers. Scammers aren't doing it for the love of the game; they're doing it because they want your money. And so we know where they're trying to go, and if you can take all the data points and point it towards money, you have a scam. And so there's an exciting moment there for kind of all of us to leverage AI to help do this.
So if you can share a couple of tips for our listeners that they could take action on today, what would that be, Clark?
Now an ad from one of our sponsors. Remember when you could trust the news? Well, then check out Walter. Walter is the free, no-nonsense newsletter for grown-ups that comes to your inbox 3 times a week. From current trends, aging in place, travel, retirement, and everything in between, including a dash of pop culture trivia and throwbacks, Walter is a great way to start your mornings and to stay informed. Oh, and did we mention that it's free? Check us out at thisiswalter.com. Get smart. Get Walter.
Yeah, the number one thing that I would say is you need to operate in essentially a zero trust environment. You know, I grew up in a time when I would get scolded if I didn't answer the home phone, like, "Hey, this is Clark speaking, you know, Hoefnagels residence." That is, and the reason that was true is because the assumption was the other person on the end is someone to be respected and trusted and all that sort of stuff. They were calling for us. This is no longer the case. You need to assume that the other person on the end of that line, that phone, that email, that text is not who they say they are. And they are ultimately trying to trick you into taking their money. And it's a very sad world, but you're seeing this kind of everywhere, where it's getting very difficult to trust what we see and who we're talking about. And this is the way I operate. Like, I double check everything before I click, before I do anything. It's just the way that we really need to operate as a society right now. The second thing is that stat I quoted, the easiest thing that you can do is to educate yourself about scams. And that's not me making money or anything like that. Like, the ARP has some great resources, BBB has some great resources, the FTC has some great resources. Like, learning about scams is your best protection. There's technology and an educated human, and those two things together are what really make a strong protection against scams. But what all of us need to do is educate ourselves. That's definitely where to start if you're looking for an actionable next step there.
So I would definitely agree on this. Personally, I don't touch emails unless I know who they're from. Like, I'll just delete them. And if someone really needs to get me, they can call me, text me, or know someone to get through to me. Especially attachments. I think attachments are, people just assume everyone's attaching something that's, like you said, trustworthy. And in today's day and age, I think most people have seen now, companies that have reputable names, Apple, Amazon, that are sending people emails all the time, have all sorts of scams associated with them, not through the brands, obviously, but through people looking to utilize that trust that has been built up and assume you'll just open it up because it says it's from them. Even UPS, don't just assume that UPS tracking thing is really from UPS. I will look at every from address, and if it looks fake, I will Google it and try to figure out like what that is, because I know that there's a virus potentially or some other scam. So yeah, I totally agree with that recommendation. Clark, I know Mary's going to ask you a question in a minute or two here, but before we get there, like, tell us a little bit about like how people can learn more about your product and where they can get more information about you, and if they have questions for you and that kind of thing. And of course, we'll put that all in the show notes.
Yeah, so the email address for the company is www.thisiswalter.com. clark.getcatch.ai. And my email is clark@getcatch.ai. That's the best way.
So, Clark, you're very passionate about what you do. You're very smart. You can do anything at all that you want. What's your why? Why do you get up every day and say, this is a business that I really want to be successful, regarding such a very, kind of scary, but, wonderful, solution to help others?
Yeah, it's a good question. My why is more around the emotional damage of scams. Is you see how, especially like older adults, like an older adult that's in their 70s, 80s, if they get scammed, there's a lot of emotional damage that's done there that sometimes people don't recover from. Questioning their independence and so many negatives that come from it. And that is really, like, I think the thing for me is just the emotional damage that follows a scam is something that's like, it's very hard to quantify, but protecting people from that damage is really like what motivates me. Yeah.
Clark, appreciate you taking some time to share your story, share some information about some of the scams out there and how to prevent yourself from becoming a victim. I'll just point out for anyone who's listening that, we've, like I mentioned earlier, we have an episode from an FBI agent who shares a lot of information about how to prevent scams. Some other technology solutions that are out there. We've spoken to people who have different tools in different spaces, right? Yours is mostly focused on the email space, I believe, at the moment. Yeah. And we've had people talk about phones, elder fraud specifically. So you gotta protect yourself, I think, is the message of the day here. So I definitely appreciate you taking time, appreciate what you're building, wish you lots of luck rolling this out to more and more people. And Mary, as always, thank you for your time and insights. And for everyone who's listening, thanks for joining us, and tune in next week for another episode of the Prime Life Podcast. Thanks again.
Remember to subscribe to the Prime Life Podcast anywhere you find podcasts. You can find all of our episodes, contact information, and more on our website, primelifepodcast.com. Stay connected with us. Follow us on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok.